It's Macro Sunday, baby, and the focus of the day is the dollar. The dollar, my precious dollars are losing a lot of strength. In fact, looking rather weak, you might even say. So big focus on that, what essentially that means for Bitcoin and all the risk on assets. Then we'll look at Bitcoin from a more fundamental perspective on the charts. And other than that, I want to welcome you back to the Krown Crypto channel. It's a lovely Sunday morning over here. I'm in desperate need of some caffeine, because it feels so damn good, man. But before we get into that, I do want to let you know that there's still another day and a half left for the sale that we have going on for the 4th of July. Of course, any one of the programs and products that you can find on the store over here are going to be on a discount, but please watch the promotional videos that accompany them. They'll explain who they're for, who they're not for, what to expect with them. And then if you have more questions, you can always email support. I do want to say, however, that the Quant project down here in the left-hand corner, which my face is actually blocking right now, that is going to be changing after the sale. Exactly after the sale, we're actually no longer going to be offering the Quant project in its current format. You can't just like buy it straight up as a one-time thing. What we're going to do is we're going to combine it with the Skeleton Key API, and that is going to become a monthly sort of deal, and that is essentially going to allow automation for the Quant project strategies, and well, I think that's honestly a better thing. So let's jump into it right in over here. Start off with DXY, the dollar index, and first and foremost, DXY has been kind of in this consolidation basically since the whole of 2023, where it's been putting these lower highs starting in about January, February. I'll just mark them off right here. Boom. Or should I do X's or should I do O's? Well, this one, an X and an O, you got to love it. Anyways, in this case, we can see that is printing a bit of a bearish formation right there, obviously. Now, with that in mind, I do want to go down into the weekly time frame and to note that there is a silver cross to the downside starting right in over here. That was in May, essentially. And yes, DXY did print another lower high right on after that. And as you can see, still respecting the cross as it does reject off of it in the last couple weeks here, especially pushing off that 55 exponential moving average, that green moving average right here, as you can see. So I would be looking for this one to very, very likely come back down somewhere around the current lows, that 101.25-ish region. I believe there's probably also hidden bearish divergence. Indeed, there is on the weekly time frame. Even the bi-weekly time frame has a bit of phantom regular bearish divergence going on right there. So in the more near term, perhaps over the next month, we do see that move come down and test somewhere down around that like 120 to 1.25-ish region. Also, the weekly jewel is going to have hidden bearish divergence here and potentially even get a major downside signal, perhaps coming into the beginning of this next week. So I want to see if that one officially turns blue alongside DMI support, in this case to the downside, obviously. So all of that in mind, within a very, 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 very low volatile environment, this could be the actual breakdown coming up. Maybe not this month, maybe not next month, but perhaps around the beginning of Q4 of this year. And in this case, we do have, like I said, a technical formation. I already kind of muddied it up with all my damn drawings. So, I'm just going to, should I delete everything? No, I'm going to just get rid of this damn box right there. Get out of my face, box. You're worthless. Well, not so worthless, but you matter, box. You matter to me as well. But yeah, we do see obviously a slew of lower highs that would kind of mark off the beginnings, the etchings of, in this case, a descending triangle, which is probably one of the only formations that I favor. Descending and ascending triangles are, they basically just boil down a trend, right? If you can read trend, you can pretty much read any pattern, any formation. But in this case, this one's starting to get a little bit more mature, a little bit more full. That's why I do think, however, that it could still take some more time, maybe around like September or so. And that's kind of where markets typically pick back up anyways, because, a lot of people are on vacation for the summer and price action is usually pretty dull. And in this case, next move probably back onto the downside right here. However, I would probably give it another chance to bounce as well. So I don't think that we're going to see any major breakdown just yet, but if and when you do see closures below about a 101, that is when this one will really start to accelerate to the downside. There would be an implied target from this as well, just based off of the width of that. Actually kind of in alignment with that 200 simple moving average, which would be a natural area of interest to the downside if and when it does break. Again, probably later this year at about $98. The official measured move would be a little bit lower than that at 97, but ultimately that would be, a pretty big impetus for, DXY coming down significantly, likely benefiting risk on assets. Now, of course, there is different things going on here. You have the BRICS nations coming out with their own potential currency, and dollar weakness doesn't necessarily imply that everything's gonna get a free ride to the upside, but it likely plays a little bit on the same side as that. It'd be more on the same side of that than not. So I would be looking for something like this again, probably around end of year here. or sorry, Q3 of this year. And in the meantime, probably another retest of these lows, probably another bounce, and then the real break. So what does that align with? Just kind of putting two and two together, going on for the next, let's say like 5-6 months. Well, Bitcoin probably has, maybe another move on, to the upside in the more interim. Then we probably see a bounce over here, like I did say, off the bottom range of this. Bitcoin probably pulls back, which also plays hand in hand with the macro analysis that we've been putting on this channel for a while now. That Bitcoin, while it probably still is another move to the upside here, it still is very likely to have somewhere between a 25 to maybe even as much as a 40% correction in the interim, and then after that, game on yet again. Maybe around the end of Q4, it probably puts in another attempt on that major rally. But yeah, looking at this, plays hand in hand again with the analysis that we've been looking at, mostly focused on Bitcoin, but in this case, you can start to see other things align with that. So I do like the confluence right there. Anyway, speaking of Bitcoin, we do see again that weekly silver cross coming in from late June. This was actually, I forgot to bring up my statistics over here, so I will just briefly type it in, not revealing my very nasty search history on the interwebs. And let me just see where I can find it really, really quickly. Okay, there it is. Yep, here we go. Silver Cross Weekly. First and foremost, I should explain what I'm even looking at. Looking at the Silver Cross, it's the yellow 21 exponential average crossing the upside of the green 55. You can also see that this is within the context of an extremely low volatile environment as well here, with weekly volatility being some of the lowest for longest that it's ever been ever in Bitcoin's history. So that does imply that the resolution of this move is likely to be rather large. We even seen the weekly jewel have that positive curvature. It will confirm that light blue color actually at the end of today, assuming that Bitcoin basically closes here or higher, already supported by DMI in this case as well. So we'll be looking at that as a generally good thing, for that next move, if you will. Anyways, we've seen several of these crosses in the past, 1, 2, 3, 4 to be exact, not including the current one, and all of them have been pretty much followed by some pretty significant price action. Now, what I've done for this particular measurement is I've measured from when the cross happens to the next major high, within the next year. So there was a little bit of confusion about this when I spoke about this, for the first time, I think this past week, but I'm just measuring within the next year. What was the next major high? Doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be at the very end of that year, but sometime within that next year, what was that major high and how many days did it take? And so you can just see the data right here. I think it kind of speaks for itself, or at least hopefully it speaks for itself. You can see some pretty phenomenal gainers. In fact, the most recent one that we did see coming out of the Rona dump over here, I should say, was actually the biggest gainer in the first year. This one went up all the way from like 8,500 to 65,000 that is, in the first 336 days. So that one I would say is a bit of an outlier, but even the prior ones, you can see that they do have a bit more of a rhyme between them as they get that first major move up, correct, and then usually continue. Actually, the only one that's kind of the odd man out is the Rona jump over, or is the one before the Rona jump over here. But even this one still had a pretty nice move to the upside, despite being what I would consider a failure from the cross given, where price was to the next major high was a 60% move. It's pretty fucking impressive, despite that. So 3 out of the 4 were long-term trending moves, meaning that did continue upwards and onwards past that first yearly high for a new major high, in some cases significantly new major highs, to the multiple thousands % tune. What I've done over here, however, is I have measured the average return. I did get rid of that first one, or the first one on the list here at 600%. It's just too much of an outlier. And still with the average return, somewhere around a little bit above 100%. With on the lower end, or the lowest one that we did see, again, just about 60%. So going back to the data over here, and like playing around with these numbers on price action, just kind of get an idea of what that would look like. Even on the lowest one, again, even on the one that was the biggest failure at 60%, what would that look like on top of Bitcoin's current price action? That would put Bitcoin at 42,000. If it goes for the average at 100, and to be fair, like we really don't have that much history here to be going off of, or really at all, that would be at about $55,000, $54,000, which both of these numbers align with some major fibs, actually, 786 and the 618 respectively there. So, does that come into play later on? Perhaps yes. Of course, there would be stops along the way as well, namely a big one at 36,000 bucks, I'd imagine, and maybe even again, or maybe even before that at 33, right around the 50% retracement here, which is just below 33, which is relevant for the lower term timeframes, I do believe. But yeah, as long as Bitcoin does have this cross going on, and especially as long as it's above the 21. I do look at this as still more likely to trade sideways and up from this region as Bitcoin essentially, spend some time, it is right at resistance. Yes. Coming up to it for the second time in a relatively soon area, is it more likely to break there? I'll let you be the judge of that, or let price action be the judge of that. Because if we are going to see a break, it probably happens within the next week or two. If that's going to be happening. If it doesn't happen within the next week or two, then there will actually be some bearish divergence forming on the other side. So that would be rather nasty. But for right now, still kind of favoring the BULAs there, I'd say, at least for another week, or maybe even 2 weeks. Anyways, moving on now. So we spoke about that. Yep. Okay. Let's go to the next chart over here. I do want to get into the MVRV yet again. I had a small update here. I'll first explain the main proposition of this chart, which is anytime that we've seen the MVRV reads get into the green zone and then, for a prolonged period after having that blow off top, so right, that would be your blow off top. This would be in your green zone over here. The first move that it sees outside of that green zone is typically a good confirmation of the accumulation range after that low was printed is essentially resolved. So in this case, that would be this area right here. Boom, trades out of the green zone. As you can see, it trades, to the upside of that accumulation zone and then upwards and onwards. Now, you'll also notice that there is typically a correction relatively soon after that on the MVRV where it comes down and it sets in a higher low, typically around the same point, although, there's a little bit of variance in that, but I'd still say pretty damn close within this case. And the reason why I bring it up right now is because obviously we already did see that one trade above the green zone over here. That was one of the major compelling factors that we were looking at to kind of confirm a macro low. But in this case, we do see that it does seemingly have in that next major higher low here on the MVRV, coming off of this tick. Actually, it would be officially right there at about 26,000 bucks price per Bitcoin. So, looking at the history of it, that has typically been a good indication that, that was the low. And yes, there was a lot of sideways after that, but that sideways eventually did trade, did move again to the upside. You can see this one over here. Boom, there's a first major low. There's that secondary higher low. Here's a first major low, or that's the first major one coming out of the green zone. There's your next higher low. You get the same thing over here that we just went over. And then I think the Rona one is the only one where we don't really have, this one doesn't really have like that secondary area. Maybe you could say this tick right here, but I wouldn't really put onto it. Again, that was, in my opinion, a bit of an outlier, being that it is, a bit of a black swan event. But we kind of have the same sort of reads going on over here as well. So that'd be another damn good indication that 25, or let's call it 26,000 bucks on a closing basis, is that major area to be aware of. Below 26,000 bucks, Bitcoin has some pretty fucking big problems again, obviously. But for right now, it could just be as simple as follow the fucking trend. Low, high, higher low, higher high, higher low. What's coming next? Maybe trend continuation. I don't know. Anyways, should we move on yet again from there? I'll bring you over to another chart. The rainbow indicator, it's no longer June, the Pride month, but it is still Bitcoin month here. It's always Bitcoin month, I guess. Looking at this one, I think the colors kind of speak for themselves. Blue region, typically, which is where Bitcoin is at right now, typically marks off the macro low and that reaccumulation phase as it matures, and then the magenta phase that kind of follows after that. Typically marks off that first major correction, actually. So, we are getting pretty damn close to that. That is why I do say that, at some point, Bitcoin is going to have a really major correction. I do think that Bitcoin is maybe a little bit more likely to trade further to the upside first before having that major correction. But the major correction, likely to come to the tune of 25 to maybe even as much as 40%. So it completely depends on how high Bitcoin gets first. Let's say it did top out where it currently is at that $31,000 high. What does 30% to the downside look like? That would put Bitcoin at around $22,500. Contrast that with if Bitcoin got to maybe like $42,000 first, what does 30% down look like? That would put Bitcoin kind of where it's at right now at about 29.5 region. If it went for like one of those crazier targets, not that I'm saying that it's going to get there, but just a what if question, say it gets to like 50-ish, 50,000, what would 30% down look like? That would put Bitcoin at $35,000. So completely depends upon where this next major high gets put on. What would essentially mark off that this current area over here would be the next major high? Very obviously below $26,000, but that's not very helpful because that'd take a little bit too much time before it's like, oh, okay, well, I think that's it. But back below about $28,000, maybe even $28,500 for me, and that would be pretty damning for current price action. A lot of other things would start to be set into motion that I think would likely lead things much lower and start to confirm it for me. But fair enough. Anyways, is there anything else that I want to be speaking about on this one? Yeah, weekly time frame. Just wanted to quickly go over this. Weekly stochastic momentum will actually continue on to the upside, assuming that today closes above 29.4 or 29.5. If it really starts to move back above this moving average here, I do think that we'll see at least a move somewhere around the critical zone, and then that's probably going to be close to like the next high, I would guess. But for right now, it's still holding within the bullish control zone. If we were to see a move back down below about 29.4, 29.5 before end of day here, that would also be pretty damning, I would say. In fact, that would be a pretty good early warning signal that this one is going to fail from this current region. But for right now, still holding about almost $800 above that pivot. So I'll kind of leave it right there, I suppose. Anyways, this was just a focus on the higher term timeframes here. Nothing on the lower term timeframes. Do I even have anything to say about the lower term timeframes right now? This video is already 16 minutes, 17 minutes too long, perhaps. So you know what? I'll leave it right there, actually. I'll leave it right there. All right. With all of that said, I want to be wishing you the best of best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully next time.